This is an okay bar for running into you. It's an awful house.
Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Nikki. We're a little bit weird over here. In the beginning of this month, or I should say last month, I picked a TBR of a whole bunch of books that I wanted to read for this month. These are the books that I had drawn out of my TBR jar, and I was thinking, how am I going to incorporate these books into a video? Well, I guess I'll just read my TBR for the video. So that's what this video is. This is me attempting to read my TBR, but you're gonna find that I kind of went in a little bit of everywhere direction, and I want to have you guys come with me as I these books and go review. Bye. This is terrifying. You're literally sitting on top of Addie LaRue, feeling great about myself because I finished Heartless. And I think I'm gonna give it 4 stars. It was good. I think this is about the same as Reckless for me. Like, the banter's good, the story was cute, Luke wasn't really annoying. I'm finding there is a trope in here I think people might not like though. But you know what? I think, all in all, a really great book. The little like crumbs you get about Jasper in this book, I have choices now to pick up right next to me since we're reading my TBR for this video. Ooh. Okay? Yeah, I'm just retarded. These are our choices to read next. I think I kinda, oh my god.
A few moments later.
I'm gonna try this. Let's give this a shot. I'm pretty sure this is about a serial killer having some sort of fascination with a group of sorority girls. So that's kind of intriguing. So let's give this a shot. I'm actually here many days later to talk about Bright Young Women. This is my first DNF of the year. I had, no joke, I bet 100 pages left of this book, and I had to stop. I have a gripe with this book. I, honest to goodness, thought that this was more gonna be serial killer based. I probably should have read the back. Here's me going in blind and seeing somewhat vague blurbs online to think that, ooh, that sounds good. This book is irritating. This is supposed to be a survivor's novel, and I DNF'd it because it is boring. And it is not at all action-packed. It is not thrilling. It is supposed to be a thriller. It is not. And the characters are, I'm sorry, kind of unlikable. And how the story was jumping between timelines, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like, you can't just talk about what's going on in the world now and then have the inner monologue jump like 20 years into the future to make some sort of comment on what's happening now, because it totally detaches yourself from what is going on in here, aka the pandemic. Personally, I don't want to read about the pandemic because that was already a terrible time, and I think everyone can agree that was a terrible time, and no one really wants to read about that in their fiction books. Okay, like, we read fiction to escape from reality. let's not put actual problems like the pandemic in here, okay? But that's just my 2 cents. My opinion, take that with what you will. This follows 2 characters, and honestly, I couldn't tell you what their names are. They're that forgettable. I think one of them is Ruth, and I think the other one is Pamela. Pamela is the head of a sorority house. She goes to a university in Florida, and the attack happens. 2 girls are killed, and so now Pamela goes on to this, basically her own detective work of having to help get the sorority back together by also trying to solve who this is by working with the police. And then at the same time, we're jumping in from another perspective, who is Ruth, who, by the way, is a odd character who lives in Issaquah, Washington. So that was kind of crazy. If you're kind of understanding how some of this is going to go, this is kind of based off of a real serial killer who they do not name, who they call the defendant. Skip to this point if you don't really want me to dive more into why I don't like it. If I can't talk about it without spoiling it. So go ahead, jump. I'll give you a second. This is supposed to be about Ted Bundy. This is a Ted Bundy book, okay? But they don't name him as Ted Bundy. We all know that he was a deranged, psychotic, horrible person who killed a lot of women in Colorado, Wisconsin, I think, Washington State, Florida. The main character, Pamela, is supposed to be based off of an actual woman who survived that night, and there is an actual character named Denise in this book who did die in real life, okay? I don't think it's okay for an author to make money off of someone's actual life like this. Claiming this is fiction and then making a profit off of someone who actually did die. There are actual people with the actual names in this book who died, but she changed how things went around to make it work better for her book, which I find absolutely disgusting. I'm not okay with it. Not only that, but this is targeted to be a thriller, and I was expecting more of what the heck is going on. Not Pamela playing detective. That shouldn't be the point. Where is the story at? There isn't any. It's so dry. We have Pamela in the very beginning. It hooks you so good. Like, oh my gosh, I got this letter. I have to go visit. I have to figure out what is happening. Jumps back in time to when Ted Bundy breaks into the sorority house, and she basically sees him after he got done murdering her best friend and another girl. And then from that point on, she's fighting with the police. We all know how the 80s and 70s were. If you were a true crime girly, like, if you understand that, you know that the police were not all that great back then. And you know what? A lot of time has changed, and we can thank that because time has done what it needed to do. It was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of annoyances, and I just found myself not caring at all because she's just so disorganized in her writing, and it's so bland and so boring. This is not a good book, and I don't recommend anyone to read this because this author is actually profiting off of someone's actual problems. People actually died, okay? The only reason why she won't put Ted Bundy in this is probably maybe she has to put royalties to it. I think this is a gross representation of a victim's side. Nothing happens. There's nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing. No growth, no nothing. And you call this a thriller? This isn't thrilling. There's grooming, sexual assault. I don't think this is a good book. I think if you want to have like an actual survivor's tale of something that actually happened that's not fiction, because this is someone pretending that something is fiction when it's clearly not. If you're naming actual people who died by Ted Bundy and changing the dates around and how it happened to fix your narrative, that's gross. Go read an actual biography of someone who did survive a serial killer, the one who did get away, because those stories are so much better than this. It's not good, and I don't recommend it. My first DNF, and I'm really bummed about it, and it's put me into another slump. So here's what's going on in my mental state after reading that. I have Addicted to You currently downloaded on my Kindle because It's free on Kindle Unlimited, so I could start reading this. This might be more of a feel-good. This might make me feel better. It's just I don't have the brain power to read about someone addicted to sex and someone addicted to booze. I just don't think I can right now. But maybe I can try. Hi! Hello! It's been, I think, a hot minute. I'm here to give you an update that I actually finished Addicted to You. I realize that I have little to no footage of me reading this book. I read it all on my Kindle, and it was fast. It was kind of fast-paced. I read it in, like, I think 3 days. This story follows Lily Calloway and Lauren Hale. They're basically like, you take Johnson & Johnson company, like the baby cleaning company, and then you take Coca-Cola and you put them together and they're like a match made in heaven for, you know, money and whatnot. Other than that, Lauren is addicted to alcohol and Lily is addicted to sex, so they have like this common like ground of, I'll let you feel your addiction if you help me feel my addiction. And they start to spiral. And I can see why a lot of people like this book. I can also see why people don't like this book. I found myself very irritated with Lily quite a bit. But I was still hoping for them to like push through their addiction problem and like be actually together, which is the whole point of this book. It's an okay book. I think I give this probably about 3 stars. It's okay. I enjoyed it for what it is. So if we are keeping count of all the books that I read so far in this video, that's 3. Look at me, off to a great start this year. I didn't even think I'd be doing that. Like, we can already have a round of applause for the fact that I actually met my first goal, which was to read at least 3 out of my 5. So I'm gonna count that as 3 that I've read so far, even if one of them is a DNF. We have these 2 to read, and I'm not really sure which I'm really kind of itching to read. I think out of these 2, I'm gonna pick up The Nightingale. She's a chonk, but I'm going to do my best with this situation, and maybe we'll get to the Discovery Witches. Let's get the show on the road.
I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down, 'cause nothing feels the same without you now. What's the point?
Hello! I'm here to give you kind of an update on the books I've been reading for my TBR and where we're sitting, because last time I pretty much talked to you, I said we're going to pick another book. And you saw a book that is not on my TBR. We're going to talk about it in a second, but first I want to talk about the books that I have on my TBR versus what I read and didn't read, and then what I ended up mood reading for the rest. Out of 5 books, I told myself that I wanted to read 3. I did reach my little goal, and I did in fact read 3 of my books. I'm very, very proud of myself. The first book I read was Heartless, and I want to say I think I want to give this about 4 stars. I really, really, really enjoyed the story of Cade and Willa, and I'm absolutely obsessed with this. I think these are totally worth the hype. But if you like literally a grumpy meets sunshine, like the epitome of grumpy meets sunshine, and you are okay with age gap and an only father, this is great, and I really, really recommend it. So after that, I read that, I was having a really good time. I was like, oh, you know what, I could use a thriller. And then I saw Destiny DNF'd it. I also DNF'd Bright Young Women. I just couldn't keep doing it anymore. This was not at all thrilling. This was really boring. The timeline jumps made it hard to follow and not really understand. I didn't really like our 2 characters in the slightest. I just really could care less, and I didn't like the clearly on the nose references of a certain serial killer. It's just glorifying him over the actual victims. That's my own opinion. I don't care. I don't know how this was a Goodreads Choice Award pick for a thriller, but this is not a thriller, and I hated it. So after that, I was feeling kind of like, you know? So I picked up another book. I read Addicted to You by Kristen Becker-Ritchie. Now, my thoughts on this book. It is easily a 3 stars, and I can understand where the hype is with the Lily and Lo. Okay, I get it. Lo is pretty great. Lily, on the other hand, has some issues she needs to work through. Actually, both of them do. They both have a lot of issues they have to work through. I had fun reading this. I also found it kind of long. Like, I think I read this in about 3 days. I remember sitting down on my Kindle, out on my living room, hanging out with Nathan, and just reading for hours. I was like, cool, I have to at least be halfway through at this point, and I look at my percentage and I'm only at like 35. There is a ton going on in here, and you know what? I had fun. I hear it only gets better. Then I was left with 2 more choices. I was left to read Discovery of Witches or The Nightingale. This is a historical fiction, probably more slightly nonfiction. I hear it's an incredible story, and honest to God, I was on the mood to read either of them. I'm a mood reader through and through, and if I'm not in the mood to read the book, I'm not in the mood to read the book. And I was skimming the internet on the YouTubes. I went down the rabbit hole we call the Cosmere that Brandon Sanderson has created. A lot of people say to start your Cosmere experience is Mistborn. This is so far probably one of the best fantasy novels I have read in a hot minute, and this is adult fantasy. This is not young adult, this is not new adult, this is adult fantasy. And what I mean by adult fantasy is it is fantasy. This is on the same realm as The Wheel of Time. The characters are amazing, the storyline is intriguing, and I honestly cannot wait to see what continues to happen. I've been reading it slowly because I'm trying to get one of my buddies to frickin' read this with me. It's amazing. I'm really enjoying it. I'm reading it slow because I want to enjoy every single minute of it. If you don't know anything about Mistborn, this follows a girl named Vin who is a street rat. She's nothing, and she is living with this terrible, rotten group because it's the only place she can go. And her brother leaves her, and she has no trust in anybody because she's taken advantage of in her thieving guild. She feels like she was taken advantage of by her brother, and then lo and behold, this strange man walks into her thieving guild, beats up her master, and takes over the guild, who by chance is this massive allomancer, and he takes a liking to her. In the most apprentice-master relationship ever so far. Like, I'm honestly infatuated with it. The way that Sanderson has even like made the world is so intriguing, and I don't know why I've had this sitting on my shelf for so long. As someone who loves a fantasy novel and has been in a fantasy slump because all I have been reading is young adult fantasy or new adult, this is a breath of fresh air. If you want to try a honest to God adult fantasy but you are intimidated by it, please try Mistborn. Really easy to get into, and I mean it's easy. As soon as you start reading it, you are thrown into the world. I think you will have as much fun as I am. I'm laughing out loud. I brought this to my in-laws' house and I'm reading it and I'm laughing out loud and everyone's just looking at me and I'm like, sorry, it's just the book. I don't think these right now would have given me what this is. So, that being said, this video had went from a lot of this to now we're up here with this. Thank you very much for hanging out with me while we read some books, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit like, follow, and subscribe. It helps me out that you guys are watching it, and it helps me get kind of a little bit more into the booktube world. I hope you guys are having a good day, and I will see you guys in the next video. Read this freaking book! Bye!
I wanted you to know that I'm afraid, but we can make it go away. I hope you